For when we were with you, we gave you this command: if anyone will not work, let him not eat. For we hear that some of you are living in idleness, mere busybodies, not doing any work. Now such persons we command and exhort in the Lord Jesus Christ to do their work in quietness and to earn their own living. Brethren, do not be weary in well-doing. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verses 10 through 13. Okay, I have my 1999 Chevy Cobalt here, and the air conditioning is not working properly. The air conditioning light lights up, but it does not blow any cold air, and I cannot hear the compressor clutch working. So what we're going to do first is I've already removed the tire on the passenger side front, and I'm going to take out the wheel liner, which I've already started. I've got these push pins removed from around the perimeter here, and there's one there, and now I have a bunch of these 7mm bolts to remove also. These two are being a little stubborn. It seems like they're kind of fused to the metal piece that holds them. So because those screws are not unscrewing there without damaging the plastic, I'm going to go ahead and hold them from the back side. So I have to go up in through the front part of the thing and back up here to hold them. Okay, so this is the wheel liner that came out. Like that. There's a little insulation piece up here. And this is what happens when you live on a dirt road. Dirt everywhere. And so there's another shield here that's protecting the compressor for the air conditioning, and there's a couple more push pins here and here that have to come out, and then there's one more right up here at the front. So this kind of a tool is what you need to get these out. Just pop that piece out first, and then you make sure it's out all the way. Get into there, and then pop it all the way out. All right, there's one more bolt that's holding it on. This guy right here, that is 10mm. It has to come out for this trim piece to come loose. And this is the splash shield for the air conditioning compressor that we removed. We'll set that out of the way. Alright, so that bolt also holds this canister in place here. So I just stuck the bolt loosely back in there to hold this up out of the way. So, but the reason we did all that was to get to this, which is the air conditioning compressor. Okay, this is the air conditioning compressor. And if you look right up here, there's a connector. And I can't do this and hold the camera at the same time, but anyway, you pop both of these things out this way and that way, and then that will lift off. And so what I did to make sure that I was getting power here was I just took you can either use a multimeter, is probably the fastest way, but if you have a engine trouble light, you can use that too. But just to make sure that there's 12 volts across here, when the air conditioning is turned on, and so it's trying to turn the clutch on, but in my case, this clutch wasn't moving, it wasn't engaging at all. So I'm going to try to replace this much of the air conditioning compressor without having to break the lines and get it, vacuumed down and refilled. So it seems like every time I do that, it costs me hundreds or a couple $100. So anyway, I'm going to try to do it without doing that. So that's the connector that I took out, just 2 wires. So you just put your multimeter in voltage mode across there and try to read 12 volts. If you have 12 volts, then, and with the air conditioning button turned on, the light lit, you know that you probably have enough pressure to in the system to allow the compressor to turn on and the clutch to engage. But as I said, I have 12 volts, but my clutch is not engaging, so that tells me there's something wrong with this coil, which is in this much of the thing. And so I bought a remanufactured clutch assembly, which includes all 3 of these pieces, and so I'm going to see if I can figure out how to get this get it changed here. Alright, so next I'm going to try to take the belt off of the AC compressor. So I took the oil filler cap off and then put it underneath there so I didn't get any of the crud that's going to fall off of this thing down in the oil inlet or add port there. So and it also looks like to get to that, I'm going to have to take this piece off so I can get underneath there. And it looks like there's a screw right here that loosens up the clamp that holds this piece to the air inlet, and then there's another one right here. So take these 2 hose clamps off, and I think that should come off. Okay, the other trick is that this piece here is a push pin, so it's a pretty long one, so you have to pull the top piece out and then the whole thing will come out, and then that thing. I'll free this up from here, and then we have to remove this hose clamp back there, and we'll get this hose disconnected from here. Okay, and once I got that off, this thing is pretty loose and comes off. So normally it's a pretty easy thing to release the tension on a belt. There's a belt tensioner on there, and you just have to put your 3/8 inch ratchet in there to relieve the tension on the belt tensioner, which is right there. Unfortunately, I can't get it in there. The gap there is too tight for me to get that in there. So what I ended up doing was I just took my bottle jack and positioned it right there, and then I had an assistant push on the bottom of it, and he was able to push that up enough that I was able to get the belt off. So anyway, not something I expected, but just to tell you how I did it. All right, there was a couple of things that I needed to do to get more access, more room in there to work on the compressor. And this is the bracket here that holds the radiator up right here. So there's a plastic pin from the radiator that goes down into this rubber mount, and you can take this piece off because it allows you more access to the compressor up here. And there's 3 bolts right here that hold that on, so it's pretty straightforward. So one of the things that I had to do was I took this bracket off. Then you push this this radiator assembly back a little bit, and so you can see I've got it propped out with a 2x4 right there to keep it away, to give myself a little more room there. And so but taking that bracket off is an important way to help you get more room, and I only had to do that on the passenger side, not on the driver's side. So in order to make it easier to have more room to work on the compressor, I took these push pins out. So I've already popped this up. You have to pop up the center, and then you just pull the things out. There's 4 of those across here. And that lets you move this back, and then it reveals these brackets right here. And these brackets hold the top end of the radiator down there, so you can see the plastic pin from the radiator comes through it. And so I just took this bolt out right here and lifted that bracket off, and I also did the one on the other side there, just to make it easier. So the next thing that I did was I opened up this clamp right here to allow this AC line to move. The next thing, there's 3 bolts that hold this compressor on, so I'm going to take these 3. There's 2 on the front and 1 in the back. Okay, so this is the compressor with all of the pulleys removed. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to show it here, but there's a snap ring that looks like this and goes over the top of this. And then back in the back of this there's a groove that goes in, and that is what holds the coil on there. And so when the coil goes on, it goes up in here like this, and it goes back over that thing. And it's got to be clocked properly, right? So that so when you get it back there, it's kind of keyed, so it only goes on there one way. So, and that's kind of the same as that your wire's coming out like this. And so then the next step is you put that snap ring on there. Okay, I'm not going to do that right at this moment. And then the next piece that goes on is this. Okay, so this is the pulley which the serpentine belt rides on this surface here, and so you have a snap ring that holds this on. It's the smaller one. Looks like this. So in order to get this off, I took the snap ring out, and then I just tapped with my hammer on the back. And then this piece, this pulley here, I did, put my, I think it was kind of over on the back corner over there where I had a little more swing room, and I was able to tap it with my hammer from that side, and then it came off. Of course, you have to, before you do that, you have to take the snap ring out. And then this guy here was on like that, and it was a little tough to get that snap ring out of there, which is the larger one. But I basically used just a straight scissors type snap ring pliers, and was able, and I think I may have had help with this one too, because somebody has to hold the compressor, because it's, in order to get it in the position it's in, it's loose, and so you need somebody to, and I was using wood blocks to kind of hold it enough to be able to get to it. And so then what I did to get this one loose, because this was kind of stubborn coming off, was I used, so it's easier to show you here what I used this 3-jaw puller, and was able to, with it in the car, I was able to hook around the parts of the coil, and then just twist this, and this pushes on the shaft of the compressor. And the trickiest part was just getting those 3 jaws in the right position to get them to hold. But once I turned this a couple of times, it just came right off, because there's really not much engagement. So it's kind of resting on this little thin piece. So, and the reason it probably originally just slid on there with no problem, there's a little bit of corrosion in there, so that's why it was a little stiff coming off. But so basically that's how it came apart. You'll notice that this piece up here is splined, and this is threaded on the end. So then the last piece to go on is this clutch plate, and it has a spline right there that lines up on the spline that's in there. And so it sits there, and when this pulley is completely on, then that bolt will stick through this hole, and then you'll be able to thread it on. So the trick for getting that off or loose is that you have to stick something in these 3 holes here. So you have 1, 2, 3 holes, and then this I ground out of there with a grinder so that I could allow room for the bolt. So if you look at this part, so basically these 2 guys, and I left a little play in there just so that, because I knew I wouldn't, these holes are a little oversized where they are. Okay, so you see how that kind of sits in there, and you can actually tighten these guys up with my method once you get them in the holes. And then that allows you enough room to get your socket to get on the bolt, which goes right there. Okay, so other information about this. This is about 9.5 inches long from tip to tip. It's about 1 inch wide this way, and it's about 1/4 inch thick. So you do need something that's, I tried a thinner piece, and it didn't really work as well. And I didn't put this bend in there. Don't think it's critical, but it did help a little bit, so you may need to bend it slightly to get it to work. Anyway, so hopefully you can make something that will work also. I think I might have had to stick a screwdriver in there or something and pry it off a little bit, but that was not hard. One thing you want to be careful of is that there's a couple of different compressors. One of these is for the 2.0 turbo, and the other is for the normal 2.2 Ecotec engine. And so those 2 have different compressors, so they may tell you it'll fit a 2009 Cobalt, but if you don't have the one with these 3 holes in it visible on the clutch plate, which looks like this, the new part, then it's the wrong part, because I ordered that one and it doesn't fit. So make sure you get the one for the 2.2 that has these 3 holes in it. And if it doesn't have those 3 holes on the picture, I wouldn't buy it, even though it's cheaper, because I think the one I looked at without the holes was about half the price of this one. So anyway, but you need this one, otherwise it won't work. A key or a hole or something that fits into, and it should fit nicely on there, and shouldn't be hard to get on anything. So this is the new snap ring. It's the larger one, and it should just slide over, but it's kind of going to be recessed back in the back, and so it's harder to see that. So the tricky part here is getting those getting the holes lined up with that, and then opening it up enough so that the snap ring will snap back in the groove. And so I already cleaned out the groove that larger snap ring goes in when I was taking it off, so I knew that it would fit back in there properly. And so I just gently tapped it right in the center of the clutch plate until that thing became visible, and then I put a socket to let it come through more. And so then the next question was, well, how far do I have to go in? I don't want to smash, put any undue pressure on the shaft. So, but I still don't have the groove for the O-ring visible, so that tells me that I have to keep going in further. Okay, so I tapped it in there a little bit further, just using the same socket and tapping on the clutch plate with the socket in front of it. And now I can feel that groove with my little pick here. And so I think that I've got it far enough on, so now the true test will be if the snap ring goes on there. Okay, so it's the compressor pulley and clutch plate are all on. It should spin freely without, that's just rubbing on the frame, but it should spin freely with no noises, shouldn't be loose. So I did assemble it incorrectly because I didn't put the little spacer in between the clutch plate and the pulley. And so when I tightened up the nut, it locked up. It was locked solid, and it wouldn't freewheel spin like you can see it's doing here. So then I figured out that's what those little spacers were for in the package, and so I used the thicker one, and that seemed to work out for me. The specification is it's supposed to be between 0.3 millimeters and 0.7 millimeters, so I used feeler gauges and stuck it up in between the clutch or the pulley and the clutch plate. And so the 0.7 millimeter space, or the 0.7 millimeter feeler gauge would not go in, and the 0.3 would go in, so I knew I was within the range. Okay, and there's 3 of these bolts that mount the compressor to the engine, and those are 16 foot-pounds of torque. Well, the air conditioning works nicely. It's good and cold, and the clutch is turning on and off like it's supposed to, and so all is good. I don't have the cover on here yet, or the splash shields on there yet, but looks like we're ready to put those on.